Brilliant, and let's start with this learning objective today. So it's to understand how to summarise information with inference. Inference is an absolutely key skill, so it's something that we need to spend some time on to make sure that we are making the most of this skill. So on this do now slide, we've got 3 billionaires. We've got Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, and they all plan to travel into space. They're all trying to make commercial space travel a reality. I want you to have a note down and have a think about what does this implicitly suggest about these men. That means, what does it suggest about maybe their personality or the way they behave, and you can note some ideas down here. What does it implicitly suggest about these men that they plan to travel into space? Okay, so this slide just shows you where this lesson fits in the context of our GCSE plan in English overall. So if you look at those 4 boxes, those represent your English GCSE exams. We are working on English Language GCSE Paper 2 this morning, and we're going to focus specifically on question 2, which is all about summarising information with inference, which is obviously our link to our learning objective. So these are our 2 key definitions for today. We've got explicit, so information which is clearly and directly stated. So there will be some things in the text that you read that are just explicitly told to you, so information which is clear and directly stated to us as readers. More importantly for us perhaps, or perhaps the key to unlocking those higher grades, is this ability to think implicitly. So implicit information, information which is suggested though not directly stated. So this is where we are using our inference, reading in between the lines and working out what a text might suggest about a person, a place, a writer's attitude, or other things of that type. So we need to have an awareness of both. So you need to record these 2 key definitions, but we're really going to be thinking about identifying implicit information in this lesson. Okay, so this is the text that we're going to look at this morning. It's from The Guardian. The Guardian is quite often a source of texts for exam papers. The exam board have used The Guardian a few times now, so it's a good publication to be aware of. So we're going to look at this article that's called "We Once Marvelled at Neil Armstrong, Now Space is a Playground for the Rich." It's by an author, writer called John Harris. What you need to do here is to copy this web link into your browser and then read this article on the website, and then move on to the next slide. You might want to read it more than once, so copy the link into your browser and you need to read this article before we move on to the next slide. So now you've had a chance to read that article. This is the kind of question you might be asked about it, so I'm just going to read the question out. So we're told, the ways in which the writer describes the space travel of the past and the present is different. Using details from the source, write a summary of these differences. Okay, so your first job really is to record that question, so write that question down. The ways in which the writer describes space travel of the past and the present is different. Using details from the source, write a summary of these differences. So we need to have a think about what's this question actually asking you to do. So it does give you some information in the question, doesn't it? So it breaks it up for you and it tells you that the writer is describing space travel of the past. So we need to look at those descriptions of people like Neil Armstrong in the text, and then the descriptions and how they differ in the descriptions of people like Elon Musk, Richard Branson, Jeff Bezos, most people who are trying to make space travel a reality in the present. So we need to use details from the source, so we need to use quotes, and we need to try and embed those quotes into our answers to write a summary of these differences. So really what we need to do here is to be identifying as much implicit detail in the text as possible. So not just how the space travel of the past and the present is described and how it's different, but following on from that, kind of why is it different really? What do the writer's choice of language kind of suggest about the types of people that undertake space travel, or how we as a population react to it? So let's record that question and we'll move on to the next slide and we'll break it down a little bit more. Right, so here's where we need to start planning our answers. So we need to return to the text. If you've read the article on screen, obviously you're not going to be able to do any highlighting, but you can record, so write down any quotes that you believe are relevant here. So what we're really looking for are short quotes. We don't want to make them really long, we want to make them really short and precise, and something that suggests something about what space travel is like. So your instruction here is to identify in the source any short quotes about what space travel used to be like and what it is like now. If we were highlighting, I would suggest you use two different colours here. One for quotes about what space travel used to be like, and one colour for what it is like now. So if you've got different coloured pens, you can perhaps record your quotes in two different colours. Next to those quotes, or underneath them, or around them, you need to make an annotation, so a label or a note saying what you can infer about space travel from the quote. So what did it used to be like? What does the writer suggest that space travel used to be like? What types of people used to do it? How did we react to it? And what is that like now? How has that changed over time? So next to each quote that you identify, we're looking for an inference, some implicit information. What is suggested by the information in the text? Right, so this is the final slide of this lesson, and it's a chance for some independent practice, so kind of writing up your response at this stage. You'll see I've put here, this question doesn't need a long response, it needs a perceptive one. This is an 8-mark question, this summary question on English Language Paper 2. So it's question 2, it's the summary question, and it's 8 marks. If we were doing this in exam conditions, you would be looking at spending really no longer than 10 to 12 minutes at a maximum answering this question. So this isn't about how much you can write, it's about how clearly, concisely and perceptively you can write. So we're looking for as many embedded quotes as possible, so quotes that are really framed well within your answer. So we don't want any sentences that start with "I know this because of the quote," or "the quote that tells me this is." We don't want any of that at all. We want to try and embed the quotes really seamlessly into your response. So we're looking for as many embedded quotes as possible, and then for each quote that you include, you must include an inference, so what that quote suggests about the space travel of the past or the space travel of the present. And if you are really going for those top grades, you need to be looking at identifying how that space travel has changed over time, so how our inferences about it from the past are different from our inferences about it in the present.